When you go to vote this year, you may have the feeling that several million people are looking over your shoulder. Sounds kind of creepy. Wisconsin's elections in 2020 are some of the highest stake ever. Are those elections secure? Will the Russians come in and tinker with the results? My guest today says, probably not. Kelly, thank you for being with me.
You're welcome.
The immediate past president of the Wisconsin Municipal Clerks Association. Kelly Michaels is the Brookfield City Clerk, and you've got more than a few elections under your belt.
I do. I have a 30-year career in this business, starting out in Wausau, Wisconsin, then moving to Stoughton and landing in Brookfield, which has been a great opportunity for me. But elections are a big part of the job for a municipal clerk. It is our bread and butter, if you will, especially in a 2020 election scenario. And security has been on the forefront of a lot of minds lately, and I think that was kicked off with the 2016 elections and the 2017 news that the Russians tried to hack into our elections, and that became big news.
Is that likely to happen?
They weren't successful then, and we've gotten even better now because the state has really put a lot of resources into making sure the statewide voter registration system is as beefed up as it can be. On top of that, that's registrations, and we certainly use that information for our poll list and these types of things, and we do have backup files.
But that's not the actual vote tally.
It's not the voting equipment, and the reason the voting equipment is great in Wisconsin is because we're not all the same. We don't have all the same equipment across the state. Some of us don't have equipment at all. And so that equipment is not live on the internet when it's in use. Some of us modem our results, and during that modeming, there's a brief moment through the phone lines.
You're online briefly.
You're online briefly, yeah. But we don't all modem at the same time. We don't all modem. So there's 1,850 municipalities, and while we're all following the same law, we don't do it the same way, which is a hacker's nightmare, right?
Kelly, the reason Kelly is our guest is she wrote an article in the January issue of the Municipality. And when I read the article, I came away thinking, okay, I thought I knew how we did elections here. Obviously, I don't know anything. We don't do it the same in Brookfield as we do in Stoughton, as we do in Wausau, as we do in Cronin-Wetter.
Right. So
why not?
Well, it's a misnomer that, there's uniformity in process. There's uniformity in law. So we all follow the same laws of the state related to elections, but it doesn't make sense to apply processes that you're using in, say, Milwaukee to, maybe a small community of 200 residents in northern Wisconsin. It would be overkill. And of course their processes would be woefully too small and not involved enough for Milwaukee. So you have to take into consideration that municipality and what are they dealing with? Are they dealing with 200 voters, or are they dealing with 200,000 voters? Right. And so you apply processes based on that. And that's the same reason why some communities don't have equipment. It's very easy for them to count the small number of ballots that they have by hand. And so just to put money and their resources in their community that could go to fixing roads, into election equipment that's just not used very often.
It sits in a closet most of the time.
It does, yes. So it wouldn't be appropriate. And so equipment is one of those things. While the state and the federal government certify the equipment that we have, it's not required that you use it. Same thing with like Badger books, electronic poll books. We found that it's logistically it's more difficult for the use of those in large operations where you're using all those public buildings, because you have to set them up ahead of time, and then how do you secure that equipment? And if it's not your building to begin with, the logistics is very difficult. But if you are a community that, it's your city hall and that's where you have voting, and, the clerk can go down there and set up that equipment and the local area network and the printers and get everything ready, it works a little bit better. So again, those equipment, that electronic poll book, they're not used in every community across the state. We're all a little bit different in how we get to the end goal.
Well, and that's, I know when you and I talked about this before the show, a lot of people pick on Wisconsin because we have all these little local governments. It seems we have a lot of them. Didn't I see a statistic somewhere that 1 out of every 6 poll workers is in Wisconsin?
Yeah, I don't see that as a weakness. It really is a strength because, again, if you look at hacking or those types of activities, bad actors out there, they would have to infiltrate 1,850 municipalities, not knowing how they do things.
And everybody does it a little differently. And
right, so it's really a strength that we have in the bottoms-up approach versus, one person at the top, providing information down. It's just more difficult.
What about absentee ballots and the way those have to be processed? That's a bit of a challenge. I know in the magazine there's a picture of, is it Brookfield? Where there are just stacks and stacks and stacks. More and more people are voting absentee. Is that process secure?
Well, the biggest
It's secure,
problem,
but
it is, but ballot integrity is a concern because 30 years ago when I started, the process is exactly the same way as it is today. But back then, you had to have a reason to vote absentee. And so, you got your mail ballots in and a few people trickled in and, you added them in and you had this poll worker process. And it was not a significant part of election votes. It was a very small percentage. I think it was early 2000, the law changed where you can vote absentee for any reason. And over the past 20 years, that has really caught on. Parties have promoted it, outside interest groups have promoted it, and it's just everywhere. And now the numbers, 2016, we saw 847,000 absentee voters, and of that, 80% of those were coming to the municipal clerk's office and voting right in person. But we never changed the process. So we still handled whether you were standing in front of us or whether your ballot was coming through the mail. We handled it like a mail process. So you come in, you vote, you put your ballot in an envelope, and then it gets all management for 2 weeks. Because you have
to lock it up somewhere.
You lock it up, but every day you bring those bins out because you got more ballots, and you got to sort them alphabetically in by wards. So I have 25 wards, so I have 25 bins, and I just keep, putting more ballots into the bins. And then you have to hire poll workers to then, on election day, get all those ballots opened and into the machines, and sometimes they reject because the ballot's got an error on it, and now that poll worker has to determine what the voter wanted. And so what the municipal clerks of Wisconsin have asked the legislators to do is to pass a law. It's called AVO, Absentee Voting Efficiency Option, whereby instead of the voter putting their ballot in an envelope and having all that middleman process, the voter would feed it into a voting machine.
Which is just there. It's not doing anything anyway.
Right? It's just there. You already own it. And so then that machine would hold it in its memory until the polls close on election day. So if you're talking about 2016, that would have been 600,000 ballots that would have been fed in, leaving you about 200,000 statewide to feed. Now, 2020, they're saying 1 million ballots. So what used to be an insignificant amount has now grown to a very large number that, if you're talking ballot integrity, you would want to cut out that middleman process.
Right. You would not want ballots not laying around, but even secured, locked in a closet, they're being moved around.
Sure, but it's it's not just that. Is, if you have bad actors out there, the opportunity to tamper, because your poll workers have pens, If you're doing a central count, the law says you're supposed to write the voter's number on the ballot. So it's not unusual to see poll workers writing on ballots to discern whether that is a tampering event or a legitimate event.
An actual mark, right.
Where they're writing somebody's, it's very difficult if you're looking at, just not to pick on Milwaukee or Madison, but these are very large operations where they have a warehouse and they'll have 90-some teams and 10 supervisors. And while, you're watching, the point is it's not unusual to see someone write on a ballot. So now from across the room you have to determine, are they making a little,
right.
Are they filling in an oval? Or on the opposite end, are they taking away someone's vote by overvoting it, filling in, the other candidate to overvote it so that that vote's tossed? So there's opportunity out there. No one wants to think that, poll workers are tampering, but, you also have to say that, ballot integrity is important.
Right.
And as those numbers become significant, you might have some bad actors out there that are saying, wow, 1 million ballots, we could really do some damage. And so what municipal clerks have identified is a way to take that number back down to, 20%.
Right.
And so I think it's a good law. On top of that, it has some other benefits. So you as a voter, you feed the ballot in yourself, then your vote got it. It went into the machine, right? It didn't get rejected, get lost, didn't get damaged, right?
Right.
So,
I saw it.
yep.
I fed it there myself, and
right,
my tie didn't go with it.
Exactly. Voter confidence goes up. But on top of that, it is a money-saving option for municipalities, because let's say the city of Brookfield, on election day, my 7 pieces of equipment are now going out to my polling sites to be used, while the in-person voting is going on. And at the same time, I now have to get 10,000 ballots into those machines. I got to rent additional machines because it's just too much. But if I were allowed to feed those ballots, if the voters were able to feed those in during those weeks that it's just sitting there all ready to go.
Well, there's a line of people out your door waiting to vote.
Exactly. So then I don't have to lease equipment, which is expensive. I can just use the equipment that I already own. Plus, I can lower the amount of envelopes I have to purchase to just truly mail ballots. I can lower the seasonal staff I have to hire to manage all those ballots. I can lower the number of poll workers that I have to process those ballots on election day. So there is cost savings associated with these large scale operations. There is also a tipping point for communities where it would be overkill to do this process with the machines. And so the law would be optional. The local control, the municipal elected officials would decide whether it's beneficial or not.
Right.
And that's been one of the criticisms of the proposed law, is that it's not uniform. But as I said before, there are lots of processes in Wisconsin that are not uniform.
Do you ever get people saying, we should just do all this on the internet? That would take away all the problems. Has anybody proposed internet voting?
I hear that now and then. I would not be in favor of that, just
Why not?
because I think it's incredibly important that no matter what process you have, that you have a paper audit backup.
Okay.
And Wisconsin has that. We have a paper trail. And I think that's incredibly important anytime you're using electronics. I mean, there are a lot of people out there that they don't trust electronics. And I think if you move that to internet, you're opening up a huge hole of opportunity for election tampering.
Basically,
And so-
if you can put it out there, I can hack it. Someone
Right.
can hack it.
Right,
I have an
which-
email on my phone right now from a good friend of mine saying, could you go buy me $500 worth of Amazon gift cards?
Right.
I don't think she sent that to me.
Right. I don't think we should go in that direction. I really like Wisconsin, how we do things at a municipal level, so that makes it difficult. I like that our machines are not on the internet when in use. I love that we have ballots as a backup and a report that prints out. So I think those are all really good processes. Where we need to work is on absentee ballot processes for in-person voting.
Which has sort of grown faster than we can deal with
It's
it.
huge, yeah.
My guest is Kelly Michaels. Kelly is the clerk of the city of Brookfield, and she's getting ready for the Super Bowl, which in this case is the presidential election. Never mind the thing with the football. Let's back up a little bit. Let's get away from the whole security question. Putting on an election, and I'll put it that way, I don't know if that's the right way to describe it. You don't simply take the dust cover off the machine, plug it in, sit down and say next, do you? I mean, there's a lot that goes into setting up for an election.
Right. It's funny because oftentimes I'll hear someone say to me, oh, it's election day, you must be extremely busy. But the truth is, it's an event. It would be like planning an event. You are actually very busy in the months before because there's so many things that you have to put into place. If you have polling sites, that are off-site, you have to work with those owners to make sure you've got that space reserved. In addition to that, it has to be ADA accessible, so you've got reports to the state, and if there's any issues, you have to fix them. City of Brookfield, we had 2 of our sites that had issues, and so we had to fix a private place
Like
that
a
we didn't
step
own.
or a door?
Yeah, there was a rise
Okay.
too much between the sidewalks, and
Right.
so you have to solve those problems even though it's not your building. And so that whole process right there, first you got to get your building in place, then you got to find out, what is your turnout going to be, because everything you do is going to be based on your guess of how many people are going to turn out. And when I say guess, it is a guess. We do get surprised sometimes, but it's an educated guess in that we look back at, well, what election have we had in the past that's similar, and what did the turnout look like? But you also have to look at, how many ballots you're going to need, which involves not just turnout, because those are just the ballots you got back, but how many did you send out? How many did you waste? And is the ballot complicated? Are you going to get, a lot of waste, in the elections? So you're making these projections, and that's going to tell you how many workers you need to, put into place. And then, of course, you have to train them on whatever job they're going to be doing.
How many poll workers do you have to hire and train in Brookfield?
So my target is 200.
200 people?
Yeah, I currently have 175, and I offer shifts, and I have 7 polling sites. So what happens is, obviously spring is difficult because a certain number of them are snowbirds. And then you get, I got a call today, I have a couple that, one of them is suffering some health problems and the other one's having their knee replaced. And so.
Are you letting them off?
I'm
Or are you
letting
saying,
them-
yep, you got to be here. We'll give you a chair.
It's making it difficult, but I've depleted my entire list for the February election, and now I'm calling poll workers and saying, hey, I know you only wanted to work a morning, but could you work a full day? Because that's what you have to do when you run out, and spring is particularly difficult. And then some of our elections hit flu season. On the Monday before the election, I get a lot of calls. I'm sick, I can't come in, and then I scramble and I, try to find people. And I brought people in that have never worked before and trained them on a Monday afternoon, and they worked on Tuesday. So these are the things that you do when you're planning any event, right? Things come up, and then you have to solve that problem because the voters are coming tomorrow, and that's not going to stop. So you have to be very agile on your feet as far as solving whatever problem there is.
Is there, some of Wisconsin's elections are nonpartisan, like the spring elections, city council, and then the statewide elections, presidential elections, legislative, those are partisan.
Yeah.
Is there a difference other than turnout?
The difference is the public's passion and perception, and presidential elections are particularly difficult because the people's threshold for patience and their threshold for following rules can sometimes get broken because the passion for their candidate. 2020 is already heating up to be difficult, and I don't know if you caught today's paper, but in the city of Oconomowoc, the mayoral race, one of the candidates was challenged. They had 216 nomination signatures, and it was a 9-page challenge came into the clerk. She certified 200, and they appealed to the state. And it turns out that they had additional signatures thrown out. So that candidate who had gotten those signatures will not be on the ballot.
But aren't you printing your February ballots any day now?
We are, but
You go back with whiteout, or how do you do this?
No, they'll have to program, they'll have to notify the county, and they'll have to, they're doing the programming right now. But the sad thing about that is it's a mayoral race, 3 candidates, one's out now. And that candidate, it was published in the paper that the challenger was being helped by the Democratic Party. Now, a mayoral race is not a partisan race.
Right.
But you can see that in a presidential year, partisan politics are starting to play in a
even in local races.
In a local race, and that's what I mean by that. It just raises the level. You get more complaints, you get more criticism. There's just more of everything.
Well, and you have voter registration drives.
You do.
And do those? I understand those can be uneven. Some of those are really well done, they're professionally managed. And then there are those that are, let's just say, more spirit and passion than paperwork.
Right. Well, we often get complaint calls from voters because either the information they're getting from the agencies that are sending them is inaccurate, or they filled out paperwork that never made its way to the municipality, so they didn't end up on the poll list. So we often get complaints that, these outside agencies didn't do their job, but mostly it's confusion because they think it's coming from us, but it isn't. These are agencies that are, getting out the vote type efforts. And, municipal clerks really have to get the word out and let them know what ways there are to safely register, because again, there are bad actors out there.
Yeah.
And when you register, you provide personal information such as your date of birth and your driver's license number. And so I don't know what happened to the information that my voters gave out that never made it to me, but it was definitely concerning for them. So voter beware. We do voter beware campaigns out on our website to say, okay, you can register online with MyVote, you can register by mail, our forms are posted, and you can come into our office. That's safe. That's safe for you. Giving your personal information to someone you don't know is never a good idea.
Yeah. And don't buy Amazon gift cards for someone from Nairobi.
Exactly.
Taking a breath, my guest is Kelly Michaels, the Brookfield City Clerk. I should tip my hat to the Watertown TV people, Karen and the rest of the crew that are helping us. Mayor McFarland is with us in the audience. Thank you, Mayor, for letting us use your space. And The Local Perspective is a production of community television stations throughout Wisconsin. Today we're talking about the big event, the election. Are you a superstitious person? Because I've got to be careful with my next question.
No.
Okay, what's your worst nightmare?
Oh, my worst nightmare is running out of ballots and having me make the front page of the newspaper and the national, TV as, the clerk, the clerk,
one that ran out.
The one, right. So
you tipped the election. It was you, right?
Right. And Brookfield has been, involved in national. Before I became the clerk, they had a situation where the Kloppenburg race was flipped due to
State Supreme Court race.
Right, and that was just simply human error. The clerk at the time had emailed the absentee portion of their votes to the county clerk, and the county clerk uploaded it onto a laptop and just simply forgot to hit save. So when it was late in the evening, she forgot to hit save. So when she posted the results the next day, the results did not include the absentee. And of course, it was caught.
Right, the system caught that mistake, as I recall.
Right, and then of course there was a delay in reporting and some other things. But yeah, that made big news. And when I became the clerk, of course, they told me about it. I didn't really hear.
What's the big deal? Oh, now I...
Right, and so, you know, I was told, we never want to have that happen again. And I'm like, so that would be my nightmare, that happens again, just because, you know, when I was hired, they, you know, was told they didn't want it to happen. So,
Yes.
thank you.
Will you promise never to let this happen? You can have the job.
Right.
So when I read your article, it was interesting to me that if you have a polling place that's adjacent to student housing or other apartment buildings where you expect a high number of transients, that perhaps you may be ready for more on-site registrations. How do you learn all of this stuff? I mean, do the clerks have a Bible that says, here are the 10 things you need to know, or do you just learn it the hard way?
Well, I think most clerks learn it through our Wisconsin Municipal Clerks Association. We have a professional association that we network with each other because there is no Bible and things change. And so that networking with other clerks, it's crucial. And so when a new clerk comes in, our association not only educates, but let's say you've missed the conference or you've missed the opportunity for education and maybe you don't get an opportunity for 4 months, we have a mentoring program. And so a new clerk can mentor with, you know, an experienced clerk to get one-on-one. My community is very much like your community. Here's what you need to know, because if you don't know it, you don't know it.
Right.
And so that helps communities. And I think our dues are like $65 a year, so cheap insurance. Not only that, we have a clerk list, an email list, and we have 700 members. So you can put a question out there, and in a couple seconds, you know, other clerks that have been there, done that, have sent you, you know, here's your answer, or here's where you need to look, or here's what happened to me. Don't, you know, watch out for this pitfall. And so that networking is extremely helpful, and it helped me, you know, my baby clerk years.
So what was, and we're kind of coming down to the end of it. I knew we would. We could spend all afternoon talking about this. But what was the one, I don't know, maybe disaster you averted, or what was the one incident in the elections that you've managed where it worked? You know, it could have gone over the cliff, but you saved it, or there was a problem that you addressed, or maybe it was just one that you got all done, you had a cup of coffee and you said, you know, that just worked really well.
Well, I don't know if I have that example, but I can tell you an example that I have never forgotten in my entire career, and it was after my first election. I was appointed the clerk in Wausau, and it was my first one, and I thought, ooh, this was, you know, not too bad. This went pretty good. And a call rang into my office, and it was a very demure older woman, and she said in her older voice, "Are you the city clerk?" And with pride, I said, "Why, yes, I am."
Better believe it.
Right, I was new. Yes, I am. And the woman, as mean as she could, said, "Ya bird brain," and she hung up on me. And to this day, I don't know what went wrong, but you better believe that I went and systematically looked at every single thing we did and how we did it. And it was because I knew there was a problem, but I didn't know
what it was.
She never called me again. I'm assuming I fixed it, or maybe she passed on. I don't know, but it was very it still rings in my ears. And so after every election, I do a debriefing with my poll workers. I do a debriefing with my staff because I've never stopped wanting to improve. And so that it was an unpleasant thing that has really helped me, I think, in my career, be a better clerk as far as elections go.
But you never found a problem.
Well, I found things, you know, because I was a
Little,
new clerk, just little things that I thought we could do better, and it opened my ears to what poll workers had to say. It opened my ears to what my staff had to say, and you know, I don't know that, you know, maybe I would have gotten there on my own, but that was the trigger. That nice little old lady who was really, really angry enough to call me a bird brain. So
Without explaining why.
without explaining why, you know, she probably mustered all of her
Courage.
that
Sure.
she could. You know, she was of that era
Yep.
where, you know, they were nice. She was probably somebody's really nice grandma, but
Kelly Michaels, thank you for being with us.
you're welcome.
Good luck with the elections. Everybody, don't forget to vote. I want to thank community media again, especially Watertown TV, for helping us put this on. This is The Local Perspective. Have a great day.